wonderful champions. I hope every one of you who is watching this video is doing perfectly fine. And here I am with Masterstroke series, where today I am going to complete human reproduction chapter in one go. Now this chapter is really important if you are someone who is there in your PU2, or probably if you are someone who is preparing for KCET, because the weightage of this chapter is really high. So not take it for granted, go through this chapter really well, and it's a scoring chapter as well. So let's get started without much amount of talking over here. So the first thing that is given in your NCERT is about the structure of the male reproductive system, my dear children. So what do you already know about it? You might know that basically in male there is testis, and testis is a place where the sperms are being made. What are sperms? Sperms are the male gamete. Now, so testis is the primary sex organ. Why do I call it primary sex organ? Because it produces gametes. That is the primary function of the male reproductive system. If there is no male gametes, then there is no point of having a reproductive system as well. So testis becomes the primary sex organ. Apart from that, obviously the sperms are being made there, but there should be someone to transport the sperm, and that function is being done by accessory ducts. Okay, now there should be someone who should nourish the sperm. That is done by accessory glands, and there should be someone who should be basically helping in transport of these sperms from the male partner to the female partner, and that work is done by the external genitalia. In the case of males, it is penis. So where is the male reproductive system? It is located in the pelvic region, my dear children. Okay, now the testis, I told you, the testis is not just right there, okay, it is inside a pouch-shaped structure which is known as scrotum, my dear children, which is outside the pelvic cavity. It is outside the abdominopelvic region, my dear children. Why do you think it is outside? Because inside our body the temperature is really high, and the sperm formation which has to take place, it cannot take place at this high temperature. So which is why it is kept outside our body inside a sac-like structure which is known as scrotum. Now this will maintain at least 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius lower temperature than the normal body temperature for the process of spermatogenesis, which is basically the formation of sperm. Please remember this particular detail, it's a very important thing. Now, what is the shape of the testis? Testis is oval shaped, my dear children. If we talk about the length, it is 4 to 5 centimeter long and 2 to 3 centimeter, my dear children, wide. Okay, now it is covered by a dense covering as well. The testis is being covered by a dense covering. So now if you get inside the structure of the testis, there are almost 250 compartments which you call as testicular lobules. Now inside each testicular lobules, you will be finding 1 to 3 highly coiled seminiferous tubules. So you have testicular lobules, my dear children, and inside each of them you have 1 to 3 highly coiled what? Seminiferous tubules. And seminiferous tubules is where the sperm formation actually take place. I told you just testis, the sperm formation take place, but where in the testis? Inside the seminiferous tubules. Now, what is there inside the seminiferous tubules that will help in the formation of sperms? Basically, it is lined by spermatogonia, that is the male germ cell. So there is one cell which has the ability to form the sperms. Okay, it is not a direct step, it is not a direct process, you will be studying about it, okay, in the process of spermatogenesis. But I am just telling you, there are certain cells which has the ability or the potential to make sperms, okay, and what do you call them? You call them spermatogonia, or the male germ cells, mother cells, okay. So these are lined up over here in the seminiferous tubules, and apart from that, there are certain other cells which are known as Sertoli cells. So what does these Sertoli cells do? They provide nutrition to the growing germ cells. So whenever this process takes place, there should be someone to provide nutrition to the growing germ cells, or basically for all the nutritionally related functions, okay. It is being done by the Sertoli cells, which is why, since it is providing nourishment and nutrition and everything, I will be calling it as nurse cells as well. Now this is a scenario inside the seminiferous tubules, but what about between the seminiferous tubules? I told you, in a testicular lobule, my dear children, there are 1, 2, 3, suppose this was 1, 2 and 3. Now in between them, you obviously have space, right? In between them, you obviously have space. Now what is in there? This space is known as interstitial space, first thing. What do you call it? Interstitial space, and it is lined by certain cells which you call as Leydig cells. What do you call them? You call them Leydig cells, which will be providing what? Leydig cells are basically the ones responsible for secreting androgens. Androgens are what, my dear children? Male sex hormones. And why do you need androgens? So for the process of spermatogenesis to take place inside the seminiferous tubules, you need androgens also. And androgens are being released outside, then they are later transported inside the seminiferous tubules. Outside by whom? By Leydig cells. Okay, apart from Leydig cells, do you have any other sort of cells over here in this particular space? Yes, you have certain immunocompetent cells, that is certain cells which would be fighting against any diseases that comes through. Okay, so there are small blood vessels and also immune cells present over there. Now this is the structure of testis. Testis, 250 lobules are there, testicular lobules. Inside 250 lobules, you have 1 to 3, 1 to 3 highly coiled seminiferous tubules, and inside the seminiferous tubules you have the spermatogonia, which would be giving rise to sperms later on. And apart from that, to provide nourishment, you have Sertoli cells, okay, which I call as nurse cells as well. Not me, is basically generally it is told as nurse cells as well. Now, outside the seminiferous tubules, you have certain space. What do you call this space? You call this space as interstitial space, okay, interstitial space. And the cells which are floating around there, you call them interstitial cells or Leydig cells. And what do? They secrete androgens, the male sex hormones. The most common male sex hormone that you all might be knowing is testosterone. It is all being released by the Leydig cells. Now why do you need hormones over there? Because these hormones are going to play a major role in the process of spermatogenesis. Now apart from that, you have blood vessels and also immune cells right over there. Got it? Now going ahead, so this is the structure of this testis, which is the primary sex organ. We also have certain other things such as the male sex accessory ducts. So for that, what do you have? So it includes rated testis, vasa efferentia, epididymis and vas deferens, my dear children. Now if I teach you like this, probably you will not remember, which is why I have to draw and teach. So listen, suppose this is a testis. Now this is the testicular lobules and everything that you are having. Okay, from this, you have seminiferous tubules, all of them in the testicular lobules. Each seminiferous tubules will be coming out. They will be forming a structure which is not given in your textbook, which is known as tubuli recti. Chalo, let's leave that. But they will again come, all of them will be coming together and forming a structure which is known as rete testis. Now this is given in your book. This is the first thing given in your book. This is what? Rete testis. Now rete testis is where the sperms are there right now, but still it has not moved outside the testis. So for moving outside the testis, to exit the testis, you have something else which is known as vasa efferentia. Children, what are all these things? These are ducts which are going to transport the sperm. So vasa efferentia lets the sperm exit the testis. Now it's in the border. Now over here, this particular vasa efferentia is going to form a very highly coiled structure which is again known as epididymis. Okay, epididymis, this is where the sperms will be maturing and things like that. Now from the epididymis, the sperms are being taken with the help of vas deferens. Okay, it's being taken with the help of vas deferens, or you also call it vasa differentia. Now where is it going? So my dear children, testis was outside the body. Now inside the body, what do you have? Okay, inside the abdominal cavity, what do you have? You have the urinary bladder. So suppose this is the urinary bladder that you are having. Okay. Now listen to me carefully. Urinary bladder will be opening in something like this, which is known as urethra. And urethra has an opening which is known as urethral meatus. Okay, and urinary bladder is connected with the help to the kidneys with the help of ureter. So this is the scenario that is presently there. So what happens is that the vas deferens which is there, it will go towards the back and come in the front like this. Cool? And here it is going to receive some secretion from the first accessory gland. So as of now we were talking about accessory ducts, okay. This is the first accessory gland that we have over here, and that is known as seminal vesicle. Cool. So seminal vesicle will be opening into this vas deferens. Together basically both of them will be forming a tube-like structure which is known as ejaculatory duct which will be opening into the urethra. So I'll say, if you talk about the root, vas deferens, then you have ejaculatory duct, then you have urethra, and it is opened with the help of urethral meatus. Cool. So related testis, vasa efferentia, epididymis, vas deferens, and then you do not include seminal vesicle over here. Okay, you have ejaculatory duct, then urethra, then urethral meatus. Now, seminal vesicle is what? It is an accessory gland, my dear children. Okay, what is it? It is an accessory gland. So this is accessory gland. Apart from this, there is one more gland up over here. It's like a donut, through which the ejaculatory duct, the urethra, and everything will be passing through. This is not paired. This is a single structure. Seminal vesicle is a paired structure. Here also, you would be having a seminal vesicle. Now, this structure which is not paired is the prostate gland. It is what? The prostate gland. And then you also have one more thing. Suppose this is the external genitalia, that is the penis that you are having. Okay, so over here, my dear children, what happens is that again there are a paired glands which are known as bulbo-urethral gland, or you also call it Cowper's gland. So how many glands are there? Seminal vesicle, prostate gland, and bulbourethral gland. Seminal vesicle gives fructose to the sperms. So that fructose provides basically energy to the sperms to move around and things like that. So seminal vesicle gives what? Fructose. Now, prostate gland, it provides calcium, and also it provides certain enzymes. Okay, it provides calcium as well as certain enzymes. Again, calcium is very important for the process of fertilization. So this sperm, when it go and fertilizes, at that point this calcium will be playing a very important role. And also it has certain enzymes. Please do not forget all this thing. So fructose, calcium, and enzymes. What about the bulbourethral gland? Bulbourethral gland will be the one which would be helping in the process of what? Lubrication. Okay, so that the easy passage of the sperms could be taking place. It provides lubrication. So these are the three glands. Now the secretion of the three glands together, you call it as seminal plasma. All the secretions together, you call it a seminal plasma. So what is seminal plasma rich in? It is rich in fructose, it is rich in calcium and the enzyme, and it is also providing lubrication. Now when the sperm comes along, you will call the whole thing as semen. You will call the whole thing as what, my dear children? Semen. So that is about the accessory glands as well. We studied two topics at one. Now one more thing is there, external genitalia. Okay, so it is the penis. So in the case of penis, my dear children, in the end region, there is a bulge region. Okay, so which you call as glans penis, which is richly supplied with so many nerve endings and things like that, which would help the male get excited during the process of sexual reproduction. Now, the glans penis over here, my dear children, it is covered by a skin. It is covered exclusively by a skin which is not found anywhere. So, this skin is known as foreskin. This skin is known as foreskin, and the movement of the foreskin up and down basically would be helping in the nerve endings to be working and getting excited. Works? So this is all about the male reproductive system. Now I'll just go back. If you want to take a screenshot, you can take a screenshot. Otherwise, let's just move around. Previously, we were here. So male sex accessory ducts include radial testis, vasa efferentia, epididymis, vas deferens. So basically, seminal tubules opens into radial testis and then vasa efferentia. Then in the epididymis, it stores the sperm for some time. From the epididymis goes to vas deferens. It loops over the urinary bladder, as I showed you, joins the seminal vesicle duct and forms ejaculatory duct, opens into urethra. Urethra starts from urinary bladder, extends through the penis, ends at the urethral meatus. Function is what? Function of the accessory duct is to store and transport the sperms. Cool? Going ahead. So this picture and all is really important. Even this picture is really important over there. Now going ahead, my dear children, sometime it works, sometime it does not. Okay. You have the external genitalia as well as the accessory glands. Let's start with the glands first. Seminal vesicle, they are paired. They secrete fructose, which nourishes the sperm, provide energy and everything. Prostate gland, it adds calcium and enzymes to the seminal plasma. Bulbourethral glands, they are paired and they lubricate the penis. Together, all of the secretions together, what do you call it as? Seminal plasma. Okay. Now, seminal plasma plus sperm, semen. Now, male external genitalia is basically it is penis. It's made up of erectile tissues, my dear children, for insemination to happen. Now, glans penis is the enlarged strip and it is covered by foreskin. That's all. And with this, we are completing the male reproductive system. But that's not all. Okay, that's not all. Let's see what else is there. So, over here, we are going to talk about male, just a second, okay? Just a second. Okay, so we were talking about spermatogenesis. So over here I told you there are certain cells which have the ability to form the sperms. I call them spermatogonia. How many number of chromosomes do they have, my dear children? They have 46 number of chromosomes. So I'll call this stage as 2n stage. That is, they have double the number of chromosomes as in all the cells. Now these cells will undergo division. This is known as mitosis. They just want to increase the number. So they increase the number, and one among them, okay, basically one among them, suppose as of now I am telling one, it's not just one, okay. One among them has gained the ability that yes, I am the one who is going to form the sperms. Now I'll call this differentiated cell as primary spermatocyte. What is the number of chromosome over here? It's still 46 because it has not started the actual reductional division, which is meiosis. So primary spermatocyte now will start undergoing a division which is known as meiosis, and meiosis happens in two stages. There is meiosis 1 and there is meiosis 2. So in meiosis 1 itself, my dear children, what will happen? This particular cell, that is primary spermatocyte, it will divide into two. These are known as secondary spermatocyte, and both of them will be just having 23 number of chromosomes each. So this will be having 23, this also will be having 23. So it has reduced the number of chromosomes. Now the secondary spermatocyte which is there, it will again divide and form something like this. So this cell divides into two, this cell also divides into two. At the end, from one particular spermatogonia, basically from one primary spermatocyte, you got 4 spermatids. How many? 4 spermatids. And what is a ploidy? It is haploid. It has just half the number of chromosomes. So it's just n. If this was 2n, this is supposed to be n, my dear children. Now spermatids, no, they are like kids, they are not mature. So sperms usually have an elongated structure, but they do not have an elongated structure. So this process where basically they undergo some maturation and all is known as spermiogenesis. Do not get confused with spermatogenesis and spermiogenesis. Spermatogenesis is formation of sperms as a overall structure which is there, my dear children. Spermiogenesis, when I am talking about that, it means I am basically making the immature spermatids transform into mature spermatozoa. Now that's not all. Later this spermatozoa which will be there, it is all happening inside the seminiferous tubules, right? Now they will be moving outside, and this process is known as spermiation. So mature sperms are going to get released from the seminiferous tubules into the accessory ducts and things like that. That is known as spermiation. So you should be knowing the flow, you should be knowing the name of the cells, and everything else is sorted. Cool? Going ahead, what do we have? Okay. Now there are hormones also which are involved in the process of spermatogenesis. When does spermatogenesis start? Spermatogenesis starts in male in puberty, during the puberty. When they hit the puberty, that's when spermatogenesis starts. What makes their body to release sperms during puberty? So in their body, the hypothalamus which is there, my dear children, hypothalamus is there in our brain, okay? So in their body, the hypothalamus is going to release a hormone that is known as gonadotrophin releasing hormone. Now this gonadotropin releasing hormone, which you also call as GnRH, is going to tell the pituitary gland to release two hormones. Okay, one is LH and the other one is FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, and then luteinizing hormone. Now what happens to the luteinizing hormone? Luteinizing hormone will go act on what? Will be going and acting on Leydig cells, my dear children. And Leydig cells were the ones that were releasing what? Androgens. So this pituitary gland releases luteinizing hormone, which will be acting on the Leydig cells, and this Leydig cells would be now releasing androgens. Now I told you, for the process of spermatogenesis, you need androgens, okay, over there. So androgens are ready. Now what about follicle stimulating hormone? Follicle stimulating hormone will go act on Sertoli cells. And now the Sertoli cells again will be releasing certain things, factors, which is not given in your book, but I am telling you. They are known as androgen binding factors or androgen binding proteins, ABP. Okay, so what is the use of it? Basically, the Leydig cells are going to release androgens, and to make these androgens stay at one particular place, you need androgen binding proteins. You need androgen binding proteins. I told you there is a process where these spermatids transforms into mature spermatozoa. So this process definitely needs a lot of testosterone in there. So the Leydig cells which release the androgens, it came inside the seminiferous tubules. And the seminiferous tubules, this whole process is happening and things like that. And the Sertoli cells are now releasing androgen binding proteins, which would be up here when this process is happening. Androgen binding proteins will be binding all the androgens and making this particular smooth process to be very smooth. So I'll say FSH acts on Sertoli cells, stimulating secretion of factors that aids in the process of spermiogenesis, because this process is known as spermiogenesis, not spermatogenesis. I'm not talking about spermatogenesis. Obviously, for spermatogenesis, you need androgens. I'm talking exclusively about spermiogenesis. Here, Sertoli cells plays a major role. They produce androgen binding protein, which would help this process to happen very smoothly. Now, during puberty, the hypothalamus is active to release the gonadotropin releasing hormone, which is why all this process happens. Cool? Works? Chalo. Now the next thing. So I'm thinking of completing all the male related part here itself, and then we will go to the female reproductive part. Okay? Now we have the structure of the sperm, my dear children. So if you see the structure of the sperm over here, this is the head region. This whole thing that you see is the head region. Now the head region again, it can be divided into two. One is this region which has the nucleus. The nucleus contains haploid content of DNA, half the number of chromosomes and everything, right? So it contains an haploid nucleus, my dear children. Okay, and at the top you see a structure like this which is known as acrosome. And what does the acrosome contain? What does the acrosome contain? It contains certain hydrolytic enzymes. Certain hydrolytic enzymes which are going to act on the membrane of the membrane of the egg and going to get inside the egg. Okay, fertilization to happen, for that you need certain hydrolytic enzymes, and those are being stored in the acrosome, which is right there in the head region itself, above the haploid nucleus. Now you have a small neck region, that is the second region that you have, and then you have a middle piece. This is what? Middle piece, my dear children, which is having so much amount of mitochondria. There will be so many mitochondria up there. Now you might think, why do you need mitochondria? Basically because you have another structure that is known as tail, and for the movement of tail you need mitochondria. So if we talk about the structure of the sperm, head is there, neck is there, middle piece is there, and tail is there. Head contains haploid nucleus and also acrosome, which is rich in hydrolytic enzymes. Okay, then you have a neck, then you have a middle piece that contains mitochondria, and then that middle piece helps in the movement of the tail. Okay, so it's a microscopic structure with all the structure. Head contains haploid nucleus and acrosomes, middle piece contains mitochondria for movement, and tail enables sperm motility. Now there might be so many sperms being released, but if they are not motile, it is not going to help in the process of fertilization. Okay, so almost so many millions of sperm, 200 to 300 millions of sperms are being released during one ejaculation, my dear children. But only one guy will be going up there and fertilizing the egg. Why so? Because not everyone is going to be capable. Lots of them are going to die because they are not motile, they don't have a perfect shape and size and things like that. So at least 60% of them should be of normal shape and size, and 40% of them should be motile for the process of fertility to happen. Cool? Now, going ahead, from now onwards, we are going to talk about the female reproductive system. So if we talk about the female reproductive system, my dear children, what do you have? Over here, you have the structure of the ovary. So female reproductive system, again, it has the primary sex organ, which is ovary, because ovary is the place where the egg is being made, and also that is the female gamete, yeah? And also one more thing happens, the female hormones are also being made up over here. Similarly, just like testis. In testis also, in the seminiferous tubules, you had the male gametes, and outside the seminiferous tubules, you had the androgens being made. Similarly, over here also, you have egg as well as female hormones being made. Now, what apart from this ovaries, what do you have? Oviduct is there, uterus is there, cervix is there, vagina is there, external genitalia is there, my dear children. And all of it is in the pelvic region again. Apart from that, you have mammary glands which were supporting the child care. So primary sex organ, as I said, it is basically ovary, and it produces ovum as well as ovarian hormone. Now it is located on the either side of the lower abdomen, my dear children, and the size of it is 2 to 4 centimeter. Is what? 2 to 4 centimeter. There it was what? There, what is the size? Do you remember? Over here, let's go. This is important. 4 to 5 centimeter and 2 to 3 centimeter is the width. Okay, it's long, 4 to 5 centimeter and 2 to 3 centimeter is the width. Over here, what is the thing? Let's see. So 2 to 4 centimeter is the total length, and it is connected to the pelvic wall, as in our wall which is up over here, my dear children. It is connected to that, and also to the uterus by the ligaments, with the help of certain ligaments. Now it is covered by thin epithelium enclosing ovarian stroma, my dear children. So if you assume that this is an ovary, so it is covered by ovarian epithelium. There will be an epithelium layer. Apart from that, inside structure, you call it as stroma. Now stroma can be divided into two parts. One is the outer cortex, and then is the inner medulla. So you have outer cortex as well as what? Inner medulla. So that's all about ovary. Will you remember this? Yes, we have to remember this. So there the length is 4 to 5 centimeter. Over here we say it is 2 to 4 centimeter. Actually it's the width that we are talking about. It's connected to the pelvic wall and also to the uterus with the help of ligaments. Going ahead, if we talk about the duct, female accessory ducts. So you have different ducts. So sorry, not different ducts. Basically you have different parts over here. So you have oviduct, you have uterus and vagina. All three of them basically form the female accessory ducts, my dear children. So first part is oviduct, so we will be talking about that, and then we will go ahead with the uterus and the vagina and all the parts. Okay. So over here, if we see this particular structure, this from here to here, it is what? The oviduct, or which you call as fallopian tube. Now if I try to zoom this in, I would be able to explain you a lot of things. So this is the ovary, and you see finger-like projections which are out over here. These are going to be the ones that collect the ovum, which are going to be released by the ovary. What do you call this structure? You call this as fimbriae, and fimbriae is a part of oviduct. That is, in oviduct you have the last region which you call as infundibulum. So I say fimbriae is a part of what? Infundibulum, my dear children. They are finger-like projections of infundibulum which would be helping in collecting the ovum. Now if you go ahead, you have ampulla. Ampulla is a broader region. You denote it as a broader region, and then from ampulla you have isthmus. After ampulla you have isthmus, which is a narrower region. Now I'll tell you one more thing. The sperm which is there, it will be coming from here, and it has to reach until the ampulla, because ampulla is a place where fertilization is going to happen, where they are going to meet, and the process of fertilization is going to happen. This whole structure is known as fallopian tube, and the length is almost around 10 to 12 centimeter. Okay, what is it? 10 to 12 centimeter. So that is being mentioned over here. So infundibulum is funnel shaped structure which is near the ovary. Fimbriae is finger like projection that collect the ovum. Ampulla is the wider middle part, and isthmus is the narrow part. And ampulla is the part where what happens? Fertilization happens. Now going ahead, talking about the next structure that we are having, that is the uterus. Okay, the uterus. So this is the uterus, my dear children. Okay, so why is it coming like that? Okay, cool. See, this is inverted pear shaped structure. Inverted, why do I call inverted pear shaped structure? Usually how does a pear look? It appears something like this. So now this one appears something like this, which is why it is known as inverted pear shaped structure. It is supported by, it is held by the ligaments attached to the pelvic wall. So uterus which is there, it has certain ligaments which attaches it to the pelvic wall. It will be opening into the vagina. So this area that you see is over vagina, my dear children. Okay, and if you go ahead, this particular region that you see, this is known as cervix, and it is known as cervical canal. So I will say together that from the uterus, suppose baby is there, baby has to move out through the cervix as well as the vagina, which is why I call both this region as cervical canal as well as the vaginal region as the birth canal. It is what? The birth canal, where the baby will be coming out. Talking about the uterus, my dear children, I have to zoom in a bit. Over here, the outermost layer that you see, it is known as perimetrium. There are three layers in the case of uterus. The outermost layer is perimetrium. Inside that, there will be a muscular layer, a smooth muscle formed layer, okay, which is known as myometrium. Why do you and muscular layer over there, because suppose the baby is in there. Now the baby has to move out during process of parturition, right? So obviously at this point of time, for expulsion of the baby, you need contraction and relaxation of the muscles, the smooth muscles. For that, you have the myometrium. Now inside that, to nourish the baby initially and things like that, not the baby exactly, the embryo, you have endometrium, which is the glandular layer. Now as I told you already, there is cervix, there is cervical canal, and there is vagina. So basically the male partner, when he inseminates, it is in the vagina where he does. From here the sperms will be moving inside. Okay, just have an idea of that. So opens into vagina through the narrow cervix, that is about the uterus we are talking about. Cervical canal plus the vagina gives the birth canal. Uterine wall layers, there is perimetrium, the thin outer membrane. Myometrium, which is thick, smooth muscle layer, okay, and it is contracting, it is going to contract and relax during delivery. Now endometrium, it is the inner glandular layer, undergoes cyclic changes in the menstrual cycle. So you might be asked, what is that particular layer which undergoes cyclic changes during the menstrual cycle? So it is the endometrium that undergoes the cyclic changes. Now going ahead, you have the female external genitalia, my dear children. So female external genitalia is a female genital organ which is externally very much visible. So over there, what do you have? You have mons pubis. You have mons pubis. So basically, there is a cushiony layer over here which would be having, which is obviously having lots of fat and also hair. This structure is known as mons pubis, my dear children. Now, there will be a layer which is like this. This is also fatty, cushiony and things like that, and this is known as fleshy folds. Basically, it is known as labia majora. It is known as labia majora. Now, inside the labia majora, you have next thing, which is labia minora. Okay. Now, over here, you would be having your urethral opening. Okay. The urinary bladder will be opening up over here, and here you would be having the vaginal opening. The vaginal opening which will be leading to the female reproductive parts, that is the cervix and uterus and everything. Now above this, there is a small region which is known as clitoris, my dear children. Okay, clitoris is a small sensitive structure which is there at the junction of the labia minora above the urethral opening. Okay, this clitoris is the one that would be helping in excitation in the case of females. Cool. So this whole structure which is there, it is known as the external genitalia, my dear children. This is the urethral opening, this is the vagina and vaginal opening, this is the labia minora, and then there is the labia majora, and that is the mons pubis. Now, the thing is, sometimes in some females, what happens is that the vagina is usually covered by a membrane, sort of thing, thin membrane, which is known as hymen. It is known as hymen, and earlier it was thought to be a thing which would suggest the virginity of the woman who is there. But now since we are way too advanced and we know a lot of things, we should be also knowing that hymen is not an indicator of virginity, because hymen can be tore if someone is riding a bicycle or doing some sports activity. Okay, it's a very thin membrane which can be broken down to do various activities, and it is not an indicator of virginity, and that should not matter to anyone as well. Okay, so that is one very important question that usually comes. You should be aware about that. Cool. So hymen is not the part of external genitalia. It's just a thing that I am saying. It's in the vagina. Okay, the thin membrane that covers the vagina is hymen. That's all. Cool. Chalo. So that has been done. Now what do we have? We have the mammary gland, and with that the female reproductive part and everything will be over, and then we will be going ahead with oogenesis. So my dear children, in the case of this, okay, that is the mammary gland which is over here. So it is a paired structure. Okay, it is a paired structure that you already know, and it is filled with glandular tissue and fat. There are almost 15 to 20 mammary lobes with clusters of milk secreting alveoli. So how many lobes are there? Almost I would be saying 15 to 20 lobes like this, and each of them would be having clusters of milk secreting what? Alveoli structure, my dear children. Now milk stored in the alveolar lumens. The alveoli would be opening into mammary tubules. The alveoli which is there, which is right over here. Okay, just a second, okay. Would be opening into tubules. Okay, and the tubules would be opening into mammary duct like this. So you have lobes. You have 15 to 20 lobes. Each of them has so many alveoli. Okay, now the alveoli would be opening into mammary tubules, and the mammary tubules coming together will be opening into mammary duct which is there, and the mammary duct which is there, it will be opening into something wider, that is known as ampulla, which you can see over here. Okay, and the ampulla will be opening into lactiferous duct, which would be again through which the milk will be exiting. So these are the lobes. Okay, this is one lobe, two lobes. So how many lobes you have? 15 to 20. Each of them will be having alveoli. Alveoli will be opening into mammary tubules. Mammary tubules will be opening into mammary duct. Tubules is not being mentioned over here. So duct has been mentioned. Now duct will be opening into ampulla. Ampulla, which is there. Okay, these structures which are there, it will be opening into lactiferous duct, which is where the milk will be exiting out. This is the structure of mammary gland. Cool? Chalo. Now, talking about the next thing, that is oogenesis. Again, very important thing. Oogenesis as in formation of the oocyte or egg, the female gamete. Just like how we had spermatogenesis, we also have to study oogenesis over here. So, my dear children, unlike males, in the case of females, oogenesis, the formation of egg, would be starting during the embryological development. So, for example, I am a female child. I was there in my mother's womb. Okay, I was there in my mother's womb. From that point onwards, the egg basically which are there, it is going to divide and do its formation. So, it begins during the embryonic development. A couple of million oogonia, my dear children, is formed in the fetal ovaries. In the ovaries of the fetus, it is being formed. Just a second, there's a glitch over there. So, we were up here. So, couple of million oogonia, my dear children, would be forming in the female ovaries, okay, in the fetal stage itself, when the baby is inside the womb of the mother. Now, no new oogonia would be added after birth, but what would happen to the pre-existing oogonia? Some of them would be entering meiosis, okay. They are going to enter meiosis, and they are going to get stuck in one phase of meiosis, which is known as prophase 1. Okay, in the meiosis, or basically in all the cell division cycle, no, you have different phases like prophase, metaphase, anaphase and telophase. All of them, when they are covered one by one, you call it that this particular cycle is being completed. So in meiosis, you have P1, that is prophase 1, metaphase 1, anaphase 1 and then telophase 1. And then in meiosis 2, you would be having prophase 2, metaphase 2, anaphase 2 and telophase 2. That is the usual scenario. So over here I am saying the oogonia which is there, it would enter prophase 1 of meiosis and get arrested at this particular stage. And I would be calling them primary oocytes now. What would I call? I could call them primary oocytes. Remember, they have just started off the division, they have not completed it. So what is the number of chromosomes that they are going to have? They are still going to have 46 number of chromosomes, my dear children. So oogonia, some of them which have started undergoing the division, you call them primary oocyte. Similarly, how you had primary spermatocyte over there, yeah. And now what happens is that the primary oocyte is surrounded by certain cellular layers. You call these cells as granulosa cells, my dear children, and basically the primary oocyte plus the granulosa cells together, you will call this structure as primary follicle. Okay, now many follicles degenerate from birth to puberty. When the time we hit puberty, almost lots of them, they will be degenerated. At least 60,000 to 80,000 primary follicles are going to stay per ovary at puberty. 60,000 to 80,000 would be staying at puberty. When we reach puberty, only these many primary follicles would be there in each of the ovaries, my dear children. Now what will happen? Please remember that who is stuck? Primary oocyte is stuck in which stage? In the prophase 1 stage. It has not underwent the complete division yet. It is still in that stuck phase only. Now the primary follicles would be basically transforming into secondary follicles. Where what is the difference between primary and secondary follicle? There will be more granulosa cells, my dear children. And there will be one extra layer formation which is known as theca layer, which would be forming. So now the secondary follicle has been made, but who is still stuck? It is the primary oocyte which is still stuck. Now this secondary follicle will be soon transforming into tertiary follicle, my dear children. Now during this transformation phase, very important thing happens. First thing is that in the tertiary follicle, you would be finding a fluid filled cavity which is known as antrum. Okay, which is known as antrum. Apart from that, the theca layer, you remember, it will differentiate into two layers. One is outer theca externa and inner theca interna. those two layers are being formed. So theca externa is fibrous and theca interna is basically a vascular layer which is there. Now what happens to the primary oocyte which is still stuck? It will complete its meiosis 1. It will complete its meiosis 1, will go through all the stages and will now enter meiosis 2, my dear children. In meiosis 2 also you have P2, M2, A2 and T2, that is prophase 2, metaphase 2, anaphase 2 and telophase 2. So now the primary oocyte which has completed its division, at least one division, okay, so it will divide into two cells. Now you will call the second cell as secondary oocyte. So in the case of spermatocytes, they divided, you get two secondary spermatocytes, but over here it's not like that. You get only one secondary oocyte and the other one you call it as first polar body. So the cytoplasm goes to one particular cell, very little cytoplasm and everything is left behind another cell which you call as first polar body. Now this first polar body which is there, it will degenerate. So no further division would be happening up there. This secondary oocyte which is only one, it will now start its second division but again get stuck in metaphase 2 stage, my dear children. So where is this happening? Inside the tertiary follicle. Inside the tertiary follicle, the primary oocyte has divided, it has formed the secondary oocyte and now the secondary oocyte is stuck in a stage which is known as metaphase 2 of meiosis. Now what will happen? Basically, as I said, primary oocyte completes its meiosis 1 and produces haploid secondary oocyte and first polar body which is there, and this polar body which is there might degenerate or not. Now, the tertiary follicle which is there, just a second, okay? Okay, the tertiary follicle which is there, it will soon transform into the next follicle, that is the mature follicle, which is known as Graafian follicle, my dear little children. What do you call it? Graafian follicle. Just give me a second, okay? Keep, and then again, why is it happening too many times today? I don't know. So just a second. Yes. So over here, now this particular primary follicle, secondary, what do you call it? Tertiary follicle is now going to form what? Graafian follicle. That is a thing that is going to happen. So let's move on to that particular thing. So over here, as I said, Graafian follicle development occurs where the tertiary follicle transforms into Graafian follicle, and I told you, inside the Graafian follicle, what do you have, my dear children? You have the secondary oocyte which is stuck in what? Metaphase 2 of meiosis. It is stuck there. Okay, slowly, listen to me carefully. When it's the Graafian follicle formation happens, what happens? The secondary oocyte would be forming a layer around it which is known as zona pellucida. It is known as zona pellucida. Now that's not all. Zona pellucida, apart from that, there is one extra layer out there. Okay, it is not made by the secondary oocyte. Remember, this is the zona pellucida which is made by the secondary oocyte. Okay, apart from that, there will be so many other cellular layers, my dear children. These cells together, you call this as corona radiata. Now this is not formed by secondary oocyte. This is basically going to be a part of the Graafian follicle which is there. Cool. So primary follicle was there, inside which you had the primary oocyte stuck in prophase 1, and then you had secondary follicle, still the primary oocyte was stuck. Now you have tertiary follicle where there is an antrum, there is a theca layer which get differentiated into inner theca interna and outer theca externa. But now it has finally, the primary oocyte has finally divided into secondary oocyte and is stuck in metaphase 2. Soon the tertiary follicle will be transforming into Graafian follicle where the secondary oocyte will be developing a new layer around it which is known as zona pellucida, and also there are few cellular layers which comes around which is known as corona radiata. Now this is not done by the secondary oocyte but it is there. Okay, in the Graafian follicle. Now this is the Graafian follicle stage where the ovulation happens, where all the cellular layers goes off and the secondary oocyte which is there, it is being released. So it's not the ovum which is being released, it's the secondary oocyte which is being released. Okay, remember, it is still stuck in the stage, it has not completed its division. Once fertilization happens, when the sperm comes in, my dear children, when the sperms will be fusing with the plasma membrane, when the sperm will be coming in and going through the zona pellucida layer and get into the plasma membrane layer, my dear children, that's when this particular secondary oocyte completes its division to give ovum and second polar body. Again, this would be degenerated. This is the only cell that you get. So from one primary oocyte, you're going to get only one ovum. Please remember it. From one primary oocyte, you're going to get only one ovum, unlike the sperms where you get 4 of them. Okay, so this is all about oogenesis. And now we have to talk about something very, very important, and that is the menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle, my dear children, it lasts up to 28 to 29 days. That is the whole cycle about. Now the first time you get your periods, okay, you call this as menarche. That is the first menstruation which happens at puberty. Okay, now in the menstrual phase, you have divided the whole cycle into different phases. So first is a menstrual phase, where what happens? So every time, thinking that the egg and the sperm will be fertilizing and fusing together, the endometrium layer which is there inside the uterus, it thickens up. Why does it thickens up? Basically, when both of them fuse, you get zygote, and the zygote will be forming the embryo. And who would provide nourishment to the embryo? It is the endometrium. But suppose fertilization has not happened. So the endometrium which was there, it will fall off. The endometrium layer which is there, it will fall off, and it happens for almost up to 5 days. Which phase is known? This phase is known as menstrual phase, and this is a bleeding. This is when the bleeding actually occurs. Now the blood is going, but now it's time to make the follicles mature. Okay, primarily again the body would be trying for the process of fertilization to happen. So basically again an egg is being released. So for that, preparation has to be done. So it starts from here. So now what happens, my dear children? Again, here comes the role of the hormones. So gonadotropin releasing hormone are being released by the hypothalamus. FSH and LH is there. The FSH, the follicle stimulating hormone which is there, my dear children, it will slowly make the follicle which is there mature. It will make the follicles mature. What happens is that we just want one follicle to be mature, not all of them. So at one point, other follicles would stop maturing, only one would be going ahead with the process of maturation. So basically during the menstrual phase, I'll say FSH amount is way too much, even LH is high, Now the thing is that when the follicles they are maturing, they are going to release an hormone which is known as estrogen. They are going to release estrogen, my dear children. What does this estrogen do? This estrogen would help in the reformation of the endometrium. Obviously, if the egg is going to be released, again you have to reform the endometrium as well. So estrogen is the one that will help in the reformation of that. Progesterone is also there, but it's not being released by anything, so this is why it is stable. So it is an ovarian hormone, progesterone is there, but it's not being released way too much, so the amount of it is very stable. So now what happens is that the follicles are generating, and when the follicles are done generating, they are going to release estrogen. So estrogen is going to make the particular endometrium layer thickened a bit. Now this is known as proliferative phase. What do you call? Proliferative phase, which happens after 5 to 6 days of menstruation. Now during this phase, the follicles are also generating, so I'll call this as follicular phase as well. I'll call this both as follicular phase as well as proliferative phase. FSH told the follicles to get matured. The follicles which are there, the cells of it are releasing estrogen, and the estrogen is making the endometrium thicken. But there is one problem. Then the estrogen which is there, my dear children, when it is being released, it tells the FSH that you have to stop your secretion. So that's a negative thing that is going upon there. But at one point, when the level of estrogen is way too much, when the level of estrogen goes way too much, at this point, even LH and FSH also shoots up. Okay, the LH, when it shoots up way too much, my dear children, that's when the Graafian follicle will be bursting open and the ovum is being released. As in, not the ovum, the secondary oocyte is being released. And this is known as the ovulatory phase, or basically the ovulation phase, or the ovulation itself, which happens almost around the 14th day of menstruation. So if you assume 28 days, the middle of it is 14 days. Okay, it happens at that particular point of time. Now ovulation has happened, the egg is being released, my dear children. Now what? Now what will happen? So whatever things are being left behind, what would you call it? You would call this as corpus luteum. So apart from the secondary oocyte, whatever thing is being left behind, my dear children, that is in the Graafian follicle, you call this as corpus luteum. Okay, now if you see, the LH has went up, which is why all this thing happened. Slowly it will come down. And the LH is the one that will maintain this corpus luteum. LH is the one that would maintain the corpus luteum. And the corpus luteum, my dear children, it is the one that is going to release progesterone and also estrogen. It will release two hormones, progesterone and estrogen. So what will happen? So now egg has been released, obviously endometrium has to be thickened up, which is why the corpus luteum releases progesterone and estrogen. Progesterone, when it's being released, it is going to thicken up the endometrium really well. So now it goes up very much. Okay, and also the endometrium will be having so much releases of so many things. So you call this phase as secretory phase, which comes after ovulation. You call this as secretory phase, and you also call this as luteal phase. Why? Because corpus luteum is being made up over here. But there's one problem. Listen to me carefully. The progesterone and the estrogen which is being released, my dear children, this progesterone goes and affects the hypothalamus and says that, hey, stop secreting gonadotropin releasing hormone. Stop secreting it. If it is stop secreting, my dear children, GnRH will be stopping the secretion of FSH and LH. Yes, FSH and LH will be stopped. Now, if it is being stopped, my dear children, who will make the corpus luteum? No one. If corpus luteum is not there, do you think progesterone, estrogen can be done? Will be there? No. So what will happen now? Slowly, again, what will happen? This whole thing will be shut down because progesterone has not been there. This corpus luteum is going to die. They are going to degenerate. Okay, the corpus luteum which is there, it is going to regress. And now it will again, since there is no progesterone, the endometrium layer shuts off again. But if fertilization is happening, my dear children, what will happen? Without this GnR, without this LH and everything, the corpus luteum will be still maintained. Without the LH, the corpus luteum will be still maintained, and hence progesterone, estrogen will be released continuously, which is why the endometrium is maintained. If fertilization is happening, if pregnancy is there. So this is the whole thing, and we shall cover it up. So menarche is the first menstruation cycle, menstruation at puberty. Menstrual phase is there, which is up to 3 to 4 days. It is shedding of the endometrial lining if fertilization is not occurring. Now follicular phase or proliferative phase, where primary follicles mature into graphene follicles, and the endometrium, it regenerates. Endometrium which is there, it will be regenerating. FSH and LH level rise, and estrogen secretion which is there, it also increases. Okay, I told you, endometrium, it regenerates, and FSH and LH which is there, it is rising, and the estrogen secretion also is increasing because of the follicles. Now ovulatory phase, where the LH, because of the estrogen which is made too much, LH also have a quick surge, which is why ovulation happens. And then there is a luteal phase or secretory phase, where the graphene follicle would be making corpus luteum, which secretes progesterone for endometrial maintenance. If no fertilization, the corpus luteum will be degenerating. Why? Because the progesterone says that GnRH will stop the secretion, GnRH will stop FSH and LH secretion. If FSH and LH is not there, corpus luteum would not be there, and hence it is actually making a threat for itself, right? But yeah, that's how it works. Now if pregnancy is there, menstrual cycle will be stopping, and the last day of not the last day, for a person, suppose she is of 50 years age, there won't be any menstrual cycle anymore. So this is known as menopause, the permanent cessation of the cycles. And that's when females have a lot of differences in the body. The hormone level changes way too much, which is why I said you should be taking care of your mother at that particular point of time. Okay. So yes, this is the menstrual cycle, my dear children. Now this happens in the case of primates. Now in the non-primates, there is another cycle that happens, which is known as estrus cycle. Please remember that as well. Yes. Going ahead. Suppose, okay, fertilization is happening. So how does it happen? So insemination happens where the semen is released into the vagina during the copulation. Sperm would be moving through the cervix to the uterus towards the ampulla of the fallopian tube. I told you ampulla is a place where the fertilization would be occurring. Now the ovum transport has to take place. So ovum also get transported there. The sperm is also going to come there. Now sperm first would be binding to the zona pellucida, my dear children. So I told you this is the secondary oocyte. The secondary oocyte basically releases a membrane around it, which is known as zona pellucida. What will happen? The sperm which is there, it will come and bind over here. Now once the sperm comes and bind over here, it will be releasing enzymes. Okay, it will be releasing enzymes. Obviously, the sperm have acrosomes, and acrosomes have hydrolytic enzymes, which will break open the zona pellucida, and this guy will come over here to this plasma membrane. What happens at this point of time? Basically, certain changes happen such that the zona pellucida would not allow the entry of any other sperms in there. So sperm binds to zona pellucida, blocking entry of other sperms, and the acrosomal enzymes help in sperm penetrate the ovum. Now what happens? The secondary oocyte completes meiosis. At this particular point of time, when the sperm comes in over here and fuses with the plasma membrane, at this point of time, the secondary oocyte which is there, which was stuck in the metaphase 2 of meiosis, will complete its division and form the ovum as well as the polar body. The polar body degenerates, the ovum fuses with the nucleus of the ovum, fuses with the nucleus of the egg. Now you had a structure which is known as what? Zygote. Which is known as zygote. Okay, cool. So listen to me. Secondary oocyte completes meiosis, forming a haploid ovum and a second polar body. Haploid nucleus of the sperm and the ovum fuses to form diploid zygote. So until now it was N, and now it is finally 2N, my dear children. Now the zygote which is there, it will slowly divide. It's a single cell. It's a single cell with a single nucleus. It will slowly divide into 2 cell stage, then basically 4 cell stage, 8 cell stage, 16 cell stage. And each cells of them are known as blastomeres. They are known as blastomeres. Okay, now 8 cell stage, when 8 to 16 cell stage occurs, my dear children, you call this stage of embryo as morula. What do you call it? You call this as morula. Okay, and this process where the zygote is dividing, you call it cleavage towards the uterus. Okay, and 8 to 16 cell when it forms, it is known as morula. One more thing, the morula will keep on dividing, form some hundreds sort of cells and things like that. This is known as blastocyst. So what happens? The morula is being formed. It all happens in the fallopian tube itself, my dear children. After a point of time, it will roll down towards the uterus, come to the uterus layer, gets embedded. Okay, suppose this is the endometrium. This is the embryo which is there. This stage which is going to get embedded into the endometrium, this stage is known as blastocyst stage. This is known as blastocyst stage, where basically what happens? Suppose in blastocyst stage, the blastomeres which are there, it will arrange like this. There will be an outer layer like this, which is known as trophoblast, and there will be an inner layer like this, which you call as inner cell mass. Okay, this whole structure is known as blastocyst. At this stage, it is going to embed into the endometrium. Now, implantation is basically this only. Blastocyst embeds into the uterine endometrium, and that's when the pregnancy begins. Now, I'll tell you one very important thing. I told you this is where it gets embedded. So the endometrium will be providing nourishment for the embryo for sure, but that's not enough. You need a placenta. And who is going to form that? Both the mother as well as the embryo. So from the embryo's end, what do you have? You have the layer of the trophoblast. You have this trophoblast layer which is going to help in the formation of the placenta, and from the mother's end, obviously you have the endometrium layer which will be coming together, my dear children, to form something which is of very much importance, and that is known as the placenta. So placenta is a disc shaped structure which is going to be formed, as I said, both of the trophoblast as well as the mother's tissue which is there. So it is both the embryo as well as mother who is making the placenta. And from the baby's end, okay, from the embryo's end, my dear children, what do you get? You get chorionic villi. The trophoblast is going to make certain villi-like structure, finger-like structure, which is going to penetrate inside like that. Okay, you call it chorionic villi. Now, suppose this is the baby that you have. This baby and the placenta is connected with the help of umbilical cord. Umbilical cord will be having so many blood vessels around it, my dear children. So, if the trophoblast is the one that is going to make the placenta, who would actually make the formation of the fetus? Who would help in the formation of the fetus and everything? The inner cell mass. The inner cell mass which is left behind, it is going to help in the formation of the fetus. So listen to me carefully. Trophoblast helps in the formation of chorionic villi, which is going to get inside the blood vascular tissues of the mother, my dear children. Both of them together forms the placenta. The inner cell mass which is there, it will further divide itself to form the actual embryo. Good? Now, what is the use of placenta? Placenta has multiple uses. First thing, placenta would be helping in exchange of gases. For example, the baby needs oxygen. From the mother's blood, the baby's to the baby's body, this particular oxygen, everything will be diffused. Okay. Similarly, the baby wants to give out the carbon dioxide. Again, the carbon dioxide which is there in the baby's blood will be diffused outside to the mother's blood through this particular connection which is being made up over here. And apart from that, the waste also, the baby's waste is being removed, excretory waste and stuff like that. It is also being removed with the help of placenta only. So, over here, so chorionic villi is a finger-like projection on the trophoblast surrounded by the maternal blood. Chorionic villi plus the uterine tissue forms the placenta. Now, function of the placenta is exchange. It supplies oxygen and nutrients, removes CO2 and the waste, and connection. The umbilical cord transports substances between the fetus and the mother. Now, endocrine role, that is placenta also has an endocrine role. It also releases certain hormones, my dear children. So, there are 4 hormones which you should definitely know. One is human chorionic gonadotropin, one is HPL, that is human placental lactogen, estrogen and progestogens. Now, this is not the 4th one. Please remember, this is not the 4th one. 4th one is this, estrogen and progesterone. Now, talking about relaxin, relaxin is not a placental hormone. Please remember it. It has been released by ovaries, only ovaries, during the end of the pregnancy, okay, during the latest stage of the pregnancy, that's when relaxin is being secreted. So, placental hormones, if you are asked, it is human chorionic gonadotropin, HPL, human placental lactogen, estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen and progesterone are already being released by ovaries, that is there, but placenta also releases it. Now, I'll tell you one more thing. I told you that basically corpus luteum has to be maintained to release progesterone and things like that, And in pregnancy, I told you there is someone else. You do not need LH and everything to maintain it. There is someone else. This is that someone else. HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin, is that something that will be basically maintaining the corpus luteum, which is released by the placenta itself. Cool. Now, there are other hormones also which goes up really high during pregnancy. If you have cortisol, you have prolactin, you have thyroxine, and also, as I said, all this thing. Okay, so it supports fetal growth, maternal metabolism and pregnancy maintenance. Remember, relaxin is secreted by ovaries, not the placenta. Okay, cool, done. Now, embryonic development after implantation. So, inner cell mass which is there, it will now form 3 germ layers, my dear children. 3 layers which will further give rise to different parts of the baby. Okay, so 3 germ layers are ectoderm, endoderm and mesoderm. Ectoderm is the outer layer, endoderm is the inner layer and mesoderm is the middle layer. So, you have ectoderm, okay, and then you have endoderm, and in middle you have the mesoderm as well. All these layers are going to form different parts of your body. Ectoderm will follow your skin and things like that, your nervous system. Endoderm will have the gastrointestinal tract and everything being formed. Mesoderm will be doing some other function. So, like that. Now, formation of organs. All adult tissues and organs develop from these 3 layers. There are stem cells present in the inner cell mass capable of forming all the tissues and organs. So, you know, stem cells, they have the potency to give rise to different type of cells. So, there are so many stem cells, my dear children, in the inner cell mass, which is why you form a whole organism with the help of that. So, do not forget these 3 germ layers as well. Now, going ahead, fetal development. How does the fetal develop? So, by the end of the first month, my dear children, okay, by the end of the first month, what do you hear? You can hear heartbeat, which is why that is the first sign of pregnancy. Okay, heart formation, heartbeat will be detectable by the first month. Second month, if you see, the limbs and the digits would be visible. Okay, the limbs and the digits would be developing. By the end of the first trimester, that means by the end of 3 weeks, or basically, 3 months and 12 weeks. So, in every month, what do you have? You have 4 weeks. So, 3 into 4, basically 12 weeks are there. By the end of 3 months, you would be finding major organs, you would be finding the limbs are perfectly developed, and external genitalia also forms. External genital organ is also being formed. Please remember this flow, this usually comes. First month, heartbeat. Okay, that is the first thing that you listen. Okay, second month, limbs and the digits which are there. And then end of the first trimester, by the 3rd month, your major organs, the limbs and the external genitalia is being formed. Now, skip the 4th month. Okay, let's skip the 4th month, which is not there in the NCERT. 5th month, what happens? The baby says, I want to have some hair and all. So, basically, hair as well as the first fetal movements, okay, hair on the head as well as the first fetal movements appear in the 5th month, my dear children. Now, by the end of the 6th month, that is the end of the 2nd trimester, as in 3 months together, you say 1 trimester, okay. So, this is the 2nd trimester which is there. Over here, there will be fine hairs covering the whole body, there will be eyelids which be separated, eyelashes also would be formed out of it. Now, that is done by the end of 2nd trimester, that means end of 6th month. Now, by 9th month, fully developed fetus would be ready for birth. That's all. That is the fetal development in humans. So first thing, the last thing that we check, okay, when someone dies, what is the first thing that you do? You check the pulse, that his heart is beating or not. Similarly, over here also, the first thing that develops is heart. Okay, second month, limbs and digits. Third month, you have limbs and digits, okay, and the third month, you have most organs as well as the external genitalia as well as the limbs being found. Now, the fifth month, you have the first fetal movements, hair on the head also appears. Now, by the end of the second trimester, fine hair would be covering the whole body, eyelids would be separated, eyelashes would be formed, and a lot of things will be happening. But 9-month fully developed fetus is there ready for the birth. Cool? Chalo. Going ahead. Last part of your chapter, that is parturition, my dear children. What happens up over here? So parturition, the whole period during which the baby was developing and everything, you call this gestation period, my dear children, which lasts up to 9 months in the case of human beings. Now parturition means it is the expulsion of the baby due to strong uterine contractions, right? Now how is it triggered? The baby itself, okay, suppose this is the uterus, my dear children. Suppose this is the uterus. And inside the uterus you have your baby. The baby itself would be releasing certain androgens, you know, hormones, male hormones, but is there in females also. Now these androgens are being converted, okay, these androgens which are there are being converted to estrogens by the placenta, okay, it would be converted to estrogen and now by the placenta, okay. Now, you know, we have myometrium, endometrium and things like that. In the myometrium, this estrogen will do one thing. It will make all the oxytocin receptors active. What receptors? Oxytocin receptors. You know oxytocin receptors? Oxytocin is a hormone being released by the maternal pituitary gland. Okay, mother's pituitary gland releases oxytocin. So, until now oxytocin was being released, but there was no one to receive it. Finally, the pituitary gland is releasing oxytocin and there will be someone to get hold of it. When the oxytocin and the receptors bind, my dear children, there will be strong uterine contraction which will make the baby move out. Which will make the baby what? Move out. So parturition is what? Expulsion of fetus due to strong uterine contraction. Now it is triggered by signals from the fetus as well as the placenta. Both the fetus and the placenta together, it gives a signal, and this is known as fetal ejection reflex. This is known as the fetal ejection reflex. Now what is the thing is that once the expulsion of things are happening, the baby is moving out, once the contraction has happened, this is creating a positive feedback loop. Again, more oxytocin will be released and the things will be going on ahead. So hormonal role is oxytocin from the maternal pituitary cause stronger uterine contraction. There is a positive feedback loop and the baby is delivered. After birth, the placenta is also being removed. The doctor will be injecting oxytocin to induce labor as well. If suppose some people delaying it could be dangerous. So oxytocin is being naturally being induced in them so that this whole reaction can be taking place really well. Okay, cool. So please remember, signals from the fetus and the placenta comes together for the fetal ejection reflex. Okay, it's not just the fetus, it's both the fetus as well as the placenta. Now, lactation and colostrum. So at the end, you know, mammary glands, they also have to produce milk. So mammary gland differentiate during pregnancy. It starts producing milk near birth with the help of another pituitary hormone, that is prolactin and things. I told you during pregnancy there are certain hormones which increases way too much, right? There are prolactin, cortisol and thyroxine. So here also basically this prolactin is going to make the mammary glands release milk. Now colostrum is the first milk which is being released and it is rich in antibody. Which antibody, my dear children? We studied it in human health and disease. It is antibody A. It is antibody A which is being given. So baby does not have it. It has to form all its organs properly. It is not being, it's just born, right? So obviously there would be some time taken for the antibodies and everything to be produced. So ready-made antibodies are being provided with the help of the milk, which is why the doctors recommend that the mother should be feeding the first milk to the baby. So that is colostrum. Okay, so it boosts newborn immunity, my dear children. So which is why we said breastfeeding is really essential for the newborns. And with that, we complete the whole chapter. I hope everything that is there in this chapter is clear to you. If you have any doubts, please feel very free to ask me down in the comment section below. That's all. Wishing you good luck. Please do not worry. Your exams are going to go really, really well. Bye-bye. Take care.